So I thought let's start talking about something you and I just both went through, which we went to both the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. My first time there, like I'm glad I did. I kind of felt like for me, like I didn't get to see Jerry Garcia with the Grateful Dead like before he died, and it was like it's one of those things in life that I'm like, oh, I regret doing that. Like I didn't go travel the world when I was younger as much as I want to, and I didn't see Jerry Garcia before he died. So it was like my first time there, and it was like super fun.
It is a spectacle unto itself, and it feels just like kind of paying homage in a way. Like I tweeted after going there, like there's something about, even if you don't get anything new, it is like a touchstone with all the principles that all of us appreciate that they brought into our lives over the last 50 years, which is amazing. But you had an insane, hilarious tweet thread throughout. It was like, so I went to the Berkshire meeting and I didn't like, I was like organized enough to get passes ahead of time. And I was like, oh, I'll just go, we'll hang out at the Hilton, we'll go to the after parties and we'll like see everybody, but I don't actually need to like go to the meeting because I've done that a few times. And then I saw one of your tweets. It was like, no, you just like walk up with like a stock certificate and let you in. I was like, oh, I think I have a photo of an account statement. And then they'd just like give you a pass and let you in. I was like, oh, this is amazing. So we ended up going, and your tweets were absolutely hilarious. And I can't believe we missed each other there. But it was a good time. A lot of pleated khakis.
Well, thank you for. Yeah. Well, I mean, you had different like demographics. Like there was like the pleated khaki crowd. You know, like I met up with one of my buddies there, who has gone like every year with his buddies. They go to Omaha for the meeting, and it's like a 20-year thing. Like every year they go, and it's like their deal, and they know the restaurants they want to go to, the hotel they want to stay in, and exactly how they want to do it. So it's like a reunion for them. And they're like one group, like this Gen X kind of like allocator. You know, Ivy League East Coast kind of crowd. But then you have this other crowd that like rolls in like recreational vehicles, like Winnebagos. Like it's like the NASCAR side of like wealth creation. And like these people, like they're in there, like, I mean, if you haven't been to the thing for people listening, like you can go buy Justin Boots, like the Reba McEntire edition, like Dairy Queen is like throwing ice cream at you. Like you can do the whole shtick, and like, it's like a NASCAR. I mean, it felt like what I did.
It's like a pop-up like. It was Berkshire Mall. Cool. Yeah, there's like a NetJets booth, and the Brooks thing always has like a Brooks running shoes and Fruit of the Loom. There's just people like wandering around with giant shopping bags and like See's candy, and like it's a hilariously like. It's also extremely Midwestern. And there's also the culture of like the Wall Street finance crew that like rolls in with like interns saving them seats, and they're all wearing suits. And like, it's just, this totally weird culture clash that these two dudes bring together. And it's still, everything is so 90s. Like the decor has not changed probably in 20 years. They just like the blue curtains and the Berkshire Hathaway backdrop. It is hilarious. It's timeless.
So two things I noticed, and I don't know if it's always been this way, but you know, one of the guys is 91, Warren, and then Charlie's 98. They schemed it that the guys didn't actually walk out. Like you were watching a video every time they walked out, or it was dark, which made me believe like, and every time I see pictures of Charlie, he's in a wheelchair. So, I mean, he's 98, he's probably not mobile, but like, I thought that was really creative when I was like, oh, like they're really like, the guys would just appear on stage. The other thing that was super crazy was, Warren like quoted, and I did the math. He quoted that they brought 11 tons of See's candy to sell at the thing. That was 1 ton per hour that they sold. That was, I did the math. I was like, oh, they're open for 11 hours basically of sales. It comes out to about a ton of candy per hour. Like it was just unbelievable. And then I was also impressed with Charlie, the 98-year-old. He ate 3, maybe 4 pounds of peanut brittle. Like all he did was eat peanut brittle.
I brought some peanut brittle to this podcast.
No. Oh, you're like the Charlie.
I wanted to get like Charlie and just like crunch it like right into the microphone. Hey.
Yeah. Well, was there anything that comes to mind as things you liked that they talked about? I mean, look, the nuclear war thing was a little weird. Like, it was the most like greatest generation thing like I've ever heard, where these guys were like grew up through the Red Scare and like the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they're like, okay, we're now going to talk for 30 minutes about the potential impact of nuclear war on our business lines. And I was just like, where did this come from? Like nobody of our generation talks like that. So I don't know. What do you think?
That one was interesting. I thought similarly, like the inflation, like he got asked about inflation like 4 or 5 times. I feel like by the 3rd or 4th time, he was actually like, all right, fine. Let me do a 40-minute talk about inflation. And that's one of those topics that I think is just, you can study academically, but it's hard to go through the like second and third order effects until you've lived through it. And they have seen so many different like macro environments that I think that they have a really good bead on it, or at least a unique perspective on it. There's not that many people with the length of careers that they have. The other, I mean, I am like a much more of a tech person than a diehard value fan. And I'm always, I'm just kind of disappointed in their Bitcoin takes. I'm not like, or crypto takes. I'm not surprised by them, but I just wish they were a little more honest about the, like, as an intellectual hero, I wish they were just kind of like, too hard pile might be dangerous. And they kind of rail against it in a way that I feel like is, I remember a few years ago hearing them say like, I'm 20 years late to recognize this, but Google's an incredible business. And I can imagine if they were, around for 20 more years that we might be talking about the same thing with some of the crypto protocols. And it's just a new paradigm. But they're so antagonistic about it. And I actually don't feel like, I always loved Munger's, like, the iron prescription of being able to argue the other side like points better than they can before you take an opinion. And I don't actually feel like I have heard that from them. They're just kind of like dishing on it. So that's a bummer, which kind of continues to be, but that's not news. And people just kind of want the headline at this point, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, their argument is basically like, because Bitcoin, which they only pick on Bitcoin, which is like, okay, well, here's the first sign you don't really understand this whole universe, but they only pick on Bitcoin. And then they're like, okay, this has no utility. And it's actually like, well, let me give you the other side of the argument, which is Bitcoin is a relatively low friction way of transferring like value, like between places just across the internet with no intermediaries, no government gets in the way, none of that stuff. Like, so there is a utility there, but like, it's disappointing, as you're saying, like they didn't really get it. And then they don't even understand like the L1's like Ethereum, right? It's like, okay, well, there's utility here. Like somebody wants to build something on top of this global.
And we shouldn't be surprised that they don't get it. And Munger has never even really liked gold either. I don't know if Buffett's stance is the same, but like stores of value that aren't cash flowing equities or hard assets that have never really been their thing. So,
yeah, dude, they're 91 and 98. And they were like, I was pretty worried for like the first hour and a half with the 50% of the talk from Warren was like ums and ahs and trying to find the word, regardless, like it would take him 10 seconds to find that word in his mind. But then he would come back, like it sounded like, of the 3 hours in the morning, like the first hour and a half was a struggle. And then I don't know if it was the Coca-Cola or the peanut brittle or whatever, but like, then he came back and it was like the Warren Buffett from like the, like the 90s, like Solomon hearings, right? Like just super coherent, cogent, logically oriented. Like he got into his groove, which made me really happy. Otherwise, I fell asleep like right after lunch, which is very girdly. I could fall asleep anywhere, but like he, I would have probably fallen asleep before lunch. And literally during the ums and ahs, I was like, oh, if this is a podcast, I'd be on 1.5x right now.
I'm pretty sure Charlie did fall asleep after lunch on stage like that. I kept watching him, his head just like dip a little lower. I was like, yeah, he's probably heard this one before. He's just checking out for a few.